When Cassie's mom's wedding planner backs out last minute, she agrees to step in. She teams up and gets closer to Kyle, who helps her with the preparations. But Cassie is already dating someone. Cassie assures her client that their papers are in order. They can easily get a small business loan with the credit scores. She also suggests setting up a college fund for their daughter, which will accrue interest tax-free. She suggests it as a safety net, but doesn't think their family will need it. She is glad her client is satisfied and promises to send over the information. She gifts her best friend Tara a birthday card she designed in her spare time. She has also filed Tara's tax return, but with a late penalty. Tara knows her paperwork is a mess, but Cassie found it an exciting challenge to go through her receipts. Tara's talk with her boyfriend, Anthony, about moving in didn't go so well. Cassie suggests sitting down and discussing it, but Tara knows that won't work. Tara also wonders if it's time for Cassie and Gordon to settle down after 3.5 years of their relationship. Cassie feels they should talk about moving in, and probably an engagement only after 4 years. Tara finds her carefully planned life very boring. She thinks Cassie always has some logical excuses. She wants some excitement and passion for her. After a text from her mom, Bonnie, Cassie discusses her plans for driving up for the wedding next week. She just thinks it's happening too fast and hasn't even met her fiancé, Henry. Tara knows it's because Bonnie understands excitement better than her. Cassie stops her boss, Marina, to set up a review before her actual review. Surely, this amount of planning will help later. She shows interest in applying for the managerial level, even if it's 2 years too early. She wants to get Marina's and her partner's attention and learn about the work she will do. Marina thinks Cassie is great, but she can't expect a promotion out of turn in an accounting firm. Bonnie's wedding prep is stalled because her wedding planner took off. She got chosen for a camping reality show. She hasn't even left a replacement for her, but Bonnie feels Cassie is organized and artistic enough to take over. Bonnie remembers that Cassie was almost an event planner and did a big internship. Cassie feels more comfortable as an accountant now. She claims she doesn't know much about decorations, but Bonnie is sure she can handle it. She asks Cassie to come over a few days earlier to tie up some loose ends. It will also give her the chance to meet Henry because Cassie was too busy for Bonnie's birthday that year. Cassie informs Gordon about her parents' small wedding in City Hall. She thinks Bonnie is excited to celebrate it better this time. Gordon thinks of her past in event planning as an amusing hobby. Cassie points out that she had a huge internship and was about to be an event planner too. She still thinks it wasn't meant to be and is glad she met Gordon through accounting. She asks if Gordon can drive up a little earlier to be with her. Gordon had put the wrong date on the calendar for the wedding. His boss, Elliot, has already scheduled a meeting for the wedding day, since Gordon thought it was a day before. Cassie wants her boyfriend at her mom's wedding, but Gordon asks her to understand how important work is. Cassie starts driving alone and stops at a cafe. Kyle asks if he can sit next to Cassie, since all other seats are taken. He almost breaks something on the table and offers his fries for the inconvenience. He thinks Curly's fries are the best, but Cassie is more worried about their sanitation practices. He knows she's the kind of person who likes sealed food. He still urges her to try one, and Cassie admits it's great. Kyle knows it's because they use fresh potatoes. He keeps driving out there because he wants to figure out their special spice blend. He assumes she is getting married since she's reading about it. She fumbles and defends the assumption and clarifies that she's single, but she admits she has a boyfriend. Thank God for that. Cassie drives up to Bonnie and Henry's place and claims she's honored to help them out. Henry greets her warmly, and Bonnie wants to get her settled. Bonnie feels her wedding to Cassie's father was perfect. She is equally excited about Henry and feels better about spending her big day with her daughter. She hands over a binder from the former wedding planner. Cassie hopes they're down to the final detail a week before the wedding. She's in for a surprise. She finds that they don't even have a caterer yet. Bonnie and Henry seem clueless, so she decides to make some calls while they go for a run. Cassie calls Kyle at Shack Catering and reminds him of a query from the former planner. Kyle has been waiting for an interview with them, so she explains she just took over. She is satisfied to learn he has culinary experience in Paris and even attended New York's Culinary Institute. He requests for a personal interview if she has more questions. Cassie offers to come to him that afternoon itself. This should be fun. Kyle feels his brother Phil should remove the catering ad. Phil reminds him they need extra revenue since they only have a niche following. Their business isn't doing well either. Phil also suggests adding something elevated to the menu. Kyle hates that term and thinks it's pretentious. He feels their menu is fine as it is and doesn't need any changes. Phil loves Kyle's food but thinks they need this catering opportunity to stay afloat. When Cassie comes for the meeting, Phil takes her to Kyle. He is working on a carpentry project for Phil's children. Phil tries to awkwardly linger in the background while they discuss specifics. Cassie explains that she took over when her mom's wedding planner left. He shows her the limited menu and learns that they're expecting 85 guests. She feels confused because caterers usually offer canapes or baby quiches for weddings. Kyle feels those items are too common, but Phil thankfully steps in. Phil insists they are flexible, but Kyle feels their restaurant's barbecue is in itself a food trend. Cassie is hoping for something more elevated. This surely makes Phil's heart skip a beat. She remembers Kyle mentioned French cuisine experience, but he still doesn't think elevated food is supposed to be good. Phil can see Cassie has lost interest, but she's polite about getting back to them. Cassie is also underwhelmed with the venue they have chosen for the wedding. The coordinator at the Cozy Luxe Inn, Ashley, claims they can make it impressive with the archway and other decorations. Ashley suggests upgrading to the gold package, which includes catering too. She thinks in-house vendors are better, and they can always explore with decorations. Of course she does. Cassie is concerned about the roast beef smell, but Ashley insists it's the smell of happy memories. Can't argue with that. Bonnie explained that this was the only place available on such short notice. Ashley also plans to brighten up the place, but there aren't many details in the binder. Cassie suggests looking at other venues in Meadowville. Bonnie doesn't think they can find anything else, but Cassie is worried about the lack of natural light. She wants the wedding to be in Bonnie's style. Bonnie already feels she's overdoing it with the big celebration. She's excited about Henry, but she feels it's most important that they're all together. Cassie admires her parents' wedding photos. Bonnie remembers that Cassie's grandmother, Eleanor, really knew how to throw a party. Cassie discusses how Gordon might not make it to the wedding. Bonnie wonders why they haven't decided to settle yet, after so many years. Cassie claims she likes that he's not romantic, and doesn't think there's any rush. Phil invites Cassie for an unofficial menu tasting. He wants her to check Kyle's catering for an event at Sycamore Park before she decides. Phil knows Kyle has his ideals about food, but reminds him they need finances so they don't shut down. As if he needs more reminders, Cassie makes it clear she's not sure about this caterer, but she still wants Bonnie and Henry to try his food. They get excited to learn that it's Kyle, because they love his barbecue at the restaurant. Cassie introduces them, but Kyle already remembers them as his regular customers. He didn't know they were getting married and was glad to hear from them. He learns that Bonnie proposed to Henry, and feels lucky to have him. Kyle brings them some sandwiches, which taste good to Cassie, but she doesn't think that kind of food is appropriate for a wedding. Henry and Bonnie love Kyle's cooking, but Bonnie admits they need something elegant. She feels they could get something like that at the Cozy Luxe, but Cassie doesn't like that either. Cassie has heard that Kyle donates his proceeds from the event to the Youth League. She thinks it's practical to write it off for taxes, otherwise he's losing money. He doesn't do it for taxes, which she understands. But Cassie has also noticed his profit margins aren't high at the shack. She knows she's making him uncomfortable, so she gets back to the topic. She asks him to cater for Bonnie's wedding because she likes that he cares about his work. She still hopes he can meet her halfway and get her something more elegant. That surely seems a possibility. As the official wedding planner, Cassie refuses to let Bonnie and Henry get married at the Cozy Luxe. Eleanor got married in a barn, so Bonnie thinks any place can work. Cassie also feels a barn is a better idea, and is impressed with how ahead of time Eleanor was. Bonnie explains to Henry that her parents had an outdoor wedding. They were forced to head into the barn after a thunderstorm. But Cassie always felt that was magical. Cassie takes them to a barn that hasn't been used in years. The owner claims they can clean the place as they like if they rent it. Cassie asks Bonnie to imagine how this place would look decorated, with lights for the reception. She wants something rustic chic, and also grounded and earthy. She feels that's more to Bonnie's taste, who admits she loves it. They all hope Cassie is not planning to do this alone. Cassie comes to ask for Kyle's help. She makes sure to butter him up a little about his catering first. She then asks if he can help her with some carpentry work for the barn she has chosen. She offers to pay more for his time and set his finances in order free of charge. Kyle tries to get out of it and claims he's busy with the restaurant. Phil steps in again and knows he can handle it. He knows how useful Cassie's financial consulting can be for them. Cassie asks Kyle to picture the barn much cleaner. She has prepared a chart for the ceremony, which impresses him. He wonders why she didn't pursue event planning as a career, since she's clearly good at it. She explains that she almost did, which is why Bonnie asked her to take over. He still disapproves of her hardware store list and doesn't think they need so much paint. She wants to brighten up the place. But Kyle feels she needs some natural wood for the rustic look she wants. She reminds him she wants it a bit chic too. Kyle thinks that since he's the designer, his preferences should be considered too. They decide to table this discussion for later. This seems like a good idea since there was too much tension. They start shifting and cleaning things in the barn. They discuss chairs and what could possibly be under a huge tarp. They argue about the kind of chairs they need and can't agree on anything. They unveil the tarp to reveal hay bales. Kyle seems to hate that Cassie wants everything by the book. He thinks the hay bales will improve the aesthetic of the place, but she wants to dump them. Cassie feels overwhelmed. But she's enjoying herself after a long time. She explains to Tara how Kyle is helping her, but has too many opinions. Tara feels she finally sounds energetic, and Cassie thinks it's because of the wedding. She also asks Tara to come down a day before to DJ the wedding. Bonnie shows Cassie the poster of A Midsummer Night's Dream, where she meets Henry. They discuss how complicated their first meeting was. It started with some confusion about the date on Bonnie's ticket, but she got a place 3 seats away from Henry. A young couple wanted to flirt, so everyone around them kept changing seats. Henry feels lucky he ended up next to Bonnie, and the magic happened. Bonnie remembers Cassie did the set design for the same play in high school, which piqued her interest. Gordon feels Cassie is taking up too much extra work. She hopes he tried to change the meeting date for the wedding, but he thinks this discussion is already settled. He doesn't think it's an issue if they meet later, but realizes Cassie wants him there. Cassie asks for some time to think about them. She plans to call him back when she's in Chicago. Cassie keeps hoping Kyle will agree to a refined version of his menu for the wedding. We all do. She suggests cute, mini egg rolls, but Kyle usually avoids such adjectives with his food. He finds such dishes fake and sophisticated, and thinks food should speak for itself. Cassie feels he's a snob about not being a snob, but, clearly, still a snob. She is handling some work too, because she doesn't want to lag behind when her promotion is due. She finds the accounting work soothing, because numbers make her feel everything will be fine. She also wants to fulfill her end of the promise, and is excited to see Kyle's taxes. Kyle feels everything is in order since he has paid all the bills. Cassie starts working on them, and points out how organized his kitchen is. He goes on about how smoothly things need to work in the kitchen. With his own example, she explains his finances need to be smooth too. She suggests cutting back on charity gigs, but giving back to the community is too important for Kyle. Cassie knows he can only sustain it with more revenue. She finally pops the question of why he hates elevated things. Kyle just hates the perception that upscale is better. He has been perfecting his barbecue sauce for years, and claims that took more effort than fancy dishes. He prefers pouring his soul into something familiar, so it's accessible to more people too. For once, this makes sense to her. Cassie feels his storefront should also look inviting. Kyle wants to run his business on word of mouth, but she asks him to not underestimate the importance of signage. She feels that will encourage walk-ins and helps people to see the amazing things he does in the kitchen. As they enjoy his butterscotch pudding, Kyle asks about Gordon. Cassie explains that he's an app developer and is usually too busy for the wedding too. She thinks it's good he's not there because she can focus on the planning. We can still think of other reasons. Cassie feels Bonnie and Henry's whirlwind romance, after 6 months of knowing each other, is very bold. But she knows Bonnie is smart and must have made the decision wisely. Bonnie keeps asking Cassie to join her and Henry, but Cassie is always working. Kyle finally feels inspired to make French brie, but asks Phil not to get his hopes up. Kyle feels the space is too tight for the reception and ceremony, so he suggests building tables instead of renting them. He wants to build long tables with barrels as support, and they could offset the roughness with the chairs she suggested. For this, they need to move the chairs for the ceremony and clear out the space for dancing at the reception too. Cassie also suggests a family-style food presentation to make it more communal. They can't believe they finally agree on something. Cassie tries to make Bonnie choose her wedding dress. She is distracted because she hopes Cassie gets married too. She wants Cassie to feel the head-over-heels kind of love and hasn't seen her eyes light up in a while. Bonnie also asks Cassie to spend more time with Henry. Cassie wonders about Kyle's love life, but he's awfully mute about his last relationship. But he agrees to take Henry for his suit fitting, since he doesn't have anyone there. Kyle has been thinking about how hard it must be for Cassie to arrange her mom's wedding to someone else. Cassie doesn't think this means Bonnie is erasing her dad's memory. Kyle wants to test if there's enough space for dancing. He asks her to join him, and she's forced to have some fun. Cassie is satisfied with their progress, but wants to do something more special. She wants to give them something unexpected and magical, but Kyle feels she's being greedy. With only a few days to the wedding, Kyle suggests they take a break. He brings her to another underdog cafe waiting to be discovered. She doesn't approve of their business model but likes their food. She feels Kyle is very interesting and full of contradictions. He is stubborn about his menu, but also travels halfway across the state to study Curly's fries. He also feels that way about her, because she somehow jumped from set design to accounting. Cassie has always been good at math, but she also did set design for theater in school and college. She used to dream about doing it professionally, and took on a huge internship. Her father passed away that summer 10 years ago. Everything got chaotic, and she decided to choose a more stable route. She wonders if Kyle always wanted to be a chef. Kyle explains that his mom was a great chef, who used to surprise him with butterscotch pudding whenever he was low. Tasting it made him feel like everything will be fine. Hal now wants to bring that kind of joy to others. Cassie admits that A Midsummer Night's Dream was her favorite design in high school. She loved building the set so the audience felt surrounded by the smell of the woods. I mean magic. Kyle confesses that this is his first catering gig. He knows so much about weddings because he planned his own. His ex-fiancée called it off the day before. He had planned all the fancy stuff for it, including elevated food. That's a shocker. They both had big jobs lined up in New York after that, but he decided to stay back in town. He still doesn't mind planning Bonnie and Henry's wedding, since he has great company in her. He shows her a side project he built with spare lumber. It seems better to her than the barn, and she wants the ceremony to take place there. It's close to the barn, so she feels people can walk back and forth for the reception. She knows it will need some decoration, but thinks it's worth it. She feels they can still integrate the elements of the two venues. They start working on the decorations, and Cassie feels it's time to remove the hay. Kyle keeps vouching for it, and they end up having a hay fight. That's surely a first. Phil finds them stuck in a moment, so they awkwardly head for lunch. Cassie checks on Henry, and is excited for him to see her work. Bonnie has shown him pictures of Cassie's work, and he thinks she's very talented. He also knows Bonnie must have pushed her to spend time with him. He feels everything happened too quickly for them too. He understands if Cassie needs more time to warm up to him. Kyle invites Cassie for an unofficial menu tasting. She likes the changes he has made with the lights. He has finally made some fancy items, and she feels like he's a different person. He claims she inspired him with what she created for her mom. She suggests putting these items on his menu, but he wants more time for that. Cassie doesn't seem excited to go back after the wedding. This week has been a dream for her, and going back feels like waking up. She claims her life in Chicago is great. No one is convinced. She thinks her time in Meadowville has been special. Kyle holds her hand and assures her he knows what she means. When Cassie finishes work that night, Marina gives her more work. She stays up late and misses Bonnie's dress fitting in the morning. Bonnie knows she's been overworked and understands she couldn't be there. Cassie works at the barn too and feels sad about missing the fitting. Kyle doesn't think she should stop planning events because he knows she's passionate about it. Cassie still insists she needs to follow the path she has set for herself. Kyle admits he loved collaborating with her and believes in her. He is busy with the catering preparations, but promises to come later to the rehearsal dinner. Cassie hears that Gordon has arrived, but doesn't seem excited. Kyle still takes that as his cue to get back to work. Gordon claims he knew how much this meant to her, so he made time. He loves what she has done to the barn, and is shocked to see how talented she is. Tara can tell Cassie is looking around for Kyle at the rehearsal dinner. As Henry gives a speech about rushing when you find love, Gordon seems inspired. He knows things have been strained between him and Cassie, so he bends down on one knee. He thinks Cassie wants a proposal, and wants to do it to not lose her. Kyle notices them and leaves when Gordon asks her to marry him. Cassie feels Gordon's proposal had too many disclaimers in it. She knows neither of them wants to marry the other, and has been making excuses to justify it. Bonnie's love has made her realize they aren't right for each other. She breaks up with him, but Gordon is happy she found something special in Meadowville. He even feels bad about dismissing her dreams earlier. Cassie is excited to meet Kyle, but he's very cold to her. He claims he saw her at the rehearsal dinner, but she seems confused. She feels weird about his coldness and decides to leave. Phil asks Kyle if something happened. Kyle feels Cassie has a fiancé now, so nothing is possible. Phil has noticed some changes in Kyle this week. He seems like his old self before his heartbreak 3 years ago. Phil has sensed mutual chemistry between them and asks Kyle to share his feelings with Cassie. Tara asks about Kyle, and Cassie thinks he might show up sometime. She wants to focus on enjoying her mom's day. Henry calls her with an emergency, and Cassie finds Bonnie in her room. Bonnie feels like hiding out and doesn't want to marry Henry. At last, some wedding jitters. She went to pick up his shoes that day and realized she didn't know his size. She feels it's too soon, and they have only known each other for 6 months. Cassie admits she had doubts about them earlier. She now feels they're perfect, and Henry is crazy about her. She knows Bonnie is only spooked because of her sudden whirlwind wedding. Bonnie feels Cassie is more careful with her choices, but she admits she broke up with Gordon. Instead of feeling sad, Cassie feels relieved and excited about the future. Who could have guessed that? She takes Bonnie to the venue and claims the theme was inspired by how they met. Cassie is hoping all this will remind Bonnie about what she shares with Henry. Bonnie knows she loves Henry and is grateful that Cassie did so much for her. Bonnie asks if Kyle knows how Cassie feels about him. Cassie knows something changed in him, so she couldn't even tell him about her breakup with Gordon. But she wants to enjoy Bonnie's wedding day and not complicate matters. They get married in a beautiful ceremony in the woods and head to the barn for the reception. Cassie welcomes Henry to the family and is glad her mom found him. Phil already has orders for Kyle as a caterer because of the food he made for the wedding. Kyle claims he's mainly happy for Bonnie and Henry. He knows he couldn't have done it without Phil and Cassie. Marina calls Cassie with news of her promotion and congratulates her. Cassie walks over to Kyle to celebrate the amazing work they did together. When he asks about Gordon, she claims he had a work emergency. He still asks her for a dance, where she compliments his food. He thanks her for pushing him because he is considering adding the items to the menu. He is happy for her promotion and knows she will be good at whatever she does. She informs him she's leaving the next day. When Cassie hits the road, Henry stops by Kyle's restaurant to thank him. He also slyly lets it slip that Cassie broke up with Gordon. Kyle doesn't waste any time and thanks Henry before leaving. He asks to sit next to Cassie in the cafe like they did when they were strangers. He knows she's headed in the wrong direction and explains why he got weird with her. He confesses his feelings and thinks last week was a dream he also doesn't want to wake up from. He asks her to stay back and help him with his bookkeeping. He's in a hurry and flustered, but makes sure to kiss her. 6 months later, Kyle's restaurant records the highest sales in their history. They have also bagged their first event client, who has heard amazing things about the barbecue sauce. Their business name is now Elevated Celebrations, and Phil moves away to give them privacy as they kiss.